Hi, everyone. This is Virginia Stanley and Lainey Mays coming to you from our various ports in the storm. Welcome back to another episode of Door to Door, a really exciting show for you today because we have with us our Times bestselling author, Alyssa Cole, along with her editor, Erica Tsang, executive editor from William Morrow, Avon, and we are so excited to talk, well, actually to listen to your conversation today about many things, including your latest bestseller, When No One Is Watching. Number one, library reads pick. That is, yay!
Thank you, every librarian who helped that happen. That was a huge surprise, so thank you.
Well, congratulations. We're thrilled. We're thrilled. And when I say, in library land, this is this is our bestseller. I mean, we got the news. We were so excited and couldn't wait to tell the folks in house and then to spread the word. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think Virginia's email was all in caps.
Yeah, it was loud. It was loud.
It was really loud. There was a lot of shouting over email.
Yeah. So, Lainey, I'm going to turn it to you now to do the introductions of Alyssa, and then we'll get started.
All right. So, welcome, Alyssa. Welcome, Erica. So, Alyssa Cole is an award-winning and critically acclaimed author of contemporary suspense and historical contemporary sci-fi romance. And Your Rom-Com: A Princess in Theory was one of the New York Times 100 notable books of 2018. And this book, When No One Is Watching, again, congrats on the Library Reads #1 pick for September. And it's Rear Window meets Get Out, and it's a gripping thriller. And I'll let you guys talk about it, but it all surrounding gentrification in a Brooklyn neighborhood. And so we can't wait to hear more about it. But this one has just gotten so many rave reviews, starred reviews from Library Journal, Booklist, Publishers Weekly. I just want to read a few of them, just a few, because if not, I would be here all day. So Publishers Weekly said it's a stellar, unflinching look at racism and greed. Booklist, searing indictment of the inseparable evils of racism and gentrification. Library Journal tackles with a somber wit ongoing issues of race, class inequity, social injustice, and predatory housing practices. A sizzling summer thriller. They also said smart, sexy, and surprising. It's been 40 best books of the summer of 2020 by Elle. Crime reads, an obsession thriller. I mean, it goes on, and there's so much love from other authors as well. And I really can't wait to hear your conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Erica, and I'm going to show the cover of the book really quickly. So here is, and it's also a really fun cover. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that any. Let's see. There we go.
Yeah. Yay.
Such a cool cover.
It is a really cool cover. There were, I don't know if you remember this, Alyssa, but there were a few variations of this.
Yeah.
And those are the ones I showed you. There were actually more. And I don't remember if I told you, but there were some where I'm looking at the representation of Brooklyn and brownstones, and it was kind of weird what people think Brooklyn looks like. And I remember rejecting quite a few of the photos because I'm like, this is not Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn. This is not Brooklyn. You can't. I couldn't show those to you. Those were like, anyway. But the cover
I did get the good ones.
Cover turned out really well, and I think is very representational of the social thriller that you've written. And I feel like until I read When No One Is Watching, I've never really read a social thriller before. What do you think of that label?
I like it. I feel like it's the most clear because, we were calling it like a gentrification thriller. But I think social thriller really gets the point across that it's social commentary as well as like in the thriller format. So I like it, and I think it's fitting for this book. And I feel like it kind of was not really in use much. When I was looking into it, the last I had seen of it was like, Rosemary's Baby and the Stepford Wives. Obviously books were being written, but I think it just kind of fell out of usage maybe. But with Jordan Peele's films coming out, and they became like social horror and social thriller in the film format, I think that it was only a matter of time before it started being applied to novels again.
I think we started a thing. So this is, like I said, this is a story about gentrification, and gentrification taken to a whole new sinister level. What has been your personal experience with gentrification?
Well, so I grew up in New York, in Jersey, and then I lived in Brooklyn, after I graduated from college, until I moved here. I live in the Caribbean now, but it was, kind of this thing. And I remember, so I grew up in Jersey City. I just remember my teacher telling us that it used to be called the armpit of the nation and stuff like that. No one wanted to live in Jersey City. Then after I graduated college and when I would go home to visit my family, just slowly seeing you go one time and everything is kind of basically how it was when you left, and then you come back a few months later and suddenly there's a huge building. Suddenly the stores that I used to go to are gone, and the neighbors are gone. So in a way, I kind of tapped into this from both my childhood home, but also where I was living in Brooklyn, and kind of just how quickly changes to the neighborhood can really change the entire feel of the neighborhood, and also change how someone's place in their neighborhood, and also just kind of leave people feeling a little unmoored. I think most people have if they've ever traveled back to their childhood home, kind of see that there are differences, but sometimes when it happens so quickly, it's really disorienting. And in New York and New Jersey, and I mean, I think it's a national, and I think it's a worldwide thing. You see people talking about this in London, you see them talking about it, pretty much everywhere. But just kind of all of this growth can be scary. First of all, where are all the people coming from? Where are the people going once all of these new buildings go up, and then there are suddenly all new people? So kind of just, I have personal experience with it, but also, so I kind of tapped into that for, the horror and the thriller aspect of the book.
There was a scene, I remember, we didn't edit this out, right? Where Theo, one of the narrators, was jogging down the street and he finds these old albums that are just thrown out, and I thought that was, where did they go? When you sell a house, where do your neighbors go? And no one really knows. And I feel like the story that you've crafted really takes it to that whole new level, and it was very, very chilling. You write in different genres, as Lainey mentioned before, romance and sci-fi, historicals. This is your first thriller. How different was it to write a thriller?
So it was different, but it wasn't that different. I feel like, I've been talking about this a lot, but kind of how romance, when you look at it, a lot of people look at romance as, oh, it's just love and sexy stuff. And I mean, that stuff is great. And it is that stuff, but it's also forming really complicated plots that have to fool the reader from the beginning, even though they know the ending. So in a way, I feel like writing a thriller was in some ways it still wasn't easy, but it was a bit easier than because romance has certain, in romance you're not like really trying to like, you can't kill the leads, and you can't, the main rules are you can't kill the leads, and you have to the story is driven by the romance. So with the thriller, it was driven more by the circumstances happening to the characters and how they were dealing with it. But overall, it was basically, I was using the same skills, I guess, that I used to write romance, which is kind of like putting clues down that will make the reader go. Usually in romance, when a reader sees a certain thing, like if, one love interest looks at the other love interest in a certain way, then the reader is like, oh yes, they're about to fall in love now. But in this book, it was more like, oh no, now something terrible is about to happen. So it was like leaning more into, instead of like the romantic swoony feelings, leaning into like anxiety and tension and scary feelings.
You were talking about fooling the reader. So in When No One Is Watching, both your narrators, Sydney and Theo, are what we would call unreliable narrators because they're just unreliable. Why did you think that was a good way to approach this story, to have both of them be unreliable?
That's partially because I feel like real people are all unreliable narrators. Like everyone has their idea of what has happened. Some people are able to be more objective than others, but everyone's experience is kind of colored by what has happened to them, what they've experienced, whether that's growing up, in relationships, and at their job. So it kind of shapes their worldview, and depending on their circumstances at any given moment, that can make their perspective more or less reliable, even if to them things seem perfectly clear. So I kind of was trying to, because I didn't want them to be bad people, I didn't, I know there are also a lot of bad people in the world, but I wanted them to be people who are, basically normal, messed up, but like many people messed up, like many of us, and who are going through some things, who maybe aren't making the best decisions and maybe aren't entirely reliable, but are relatable, who aren't like just actively terrible people.
I think you did that really well. They were very believable.
Thank you.
I know you did a lot of research for this book. Sydney is researching for her historical walking tour, and so she was doing a lot of research. You did a lot of research. What kind of rabbit hole did you fall into when you were doing all of this for the book?
So many rabbit holes.
The most interesting rabbit hole.
I guess one of them was kind of just learning about some of the things that shaped New York and America, and kind of things like trying to think of something that doesn't give away the plot. But like, one aspect is like, generational wealth, and how many times it's kind of seen as something that happens or the result of just not trying hard enough, when in reality, when you look at laws, and I mean behavior from people with power on multiple levels up to and including the government, there are so many things that have been stacked against various marginalized people, particularly Black people, and you start to see these things, and it's like, so rabbit hole. So for example, one thing was laws that prevented people from owning property, or then when it became, okay, you can own property, you can't pass it on to your children. So if you die, then that just goes back to us. Things like that. And also just like weird stuff, like, because it covers history from the beginning of when the Dutch arrived. Well, not the beginning of American colonization, I guess. But so just some of the things I was reading, I was like, it's just so ridiculous in a way, but I guess just very human in the ways that humans can be terrible. Like the way the Dutch treated the indigenous people who were living on the land, and just like kind of being malicious for no reason at all. But yeah, I guess the rabbit holes were kind of thinking about like property and how people are allowed to own property, and kind of how society has been crafted by, in many ways, around property ownership, and also the things that come with that, whether that be allowing people to have it or protecting it. And we can see that, playing out now and unfortunately in real time.
Have you visited the places that you mentioned in the book?
I visited some places, some just living in New York for so long, you like walk around, you walk past these places, and one day you're like, oh, wow, everything is a historic site if you think of it that way. But I did get to go to the Weeksville, there's the Weeksville Heritage Center, which is a historical Black neighborhood that was built in, I believe it was 1839. And in the book, Sydney and Theo go to visit it. And, I lived in that neighborhood and I didn't know it was there until, a little while before I started writing this book. And I did go to visit, and three of the historical houses have been preserved. And actually the site was found because like someone was kind of looking for it. And then in the 70s, they like rented a helicopter and were looking around the neighborhood. And then they found the three houses in this like empty lot. So then they preserved the lot and the houses. And then the Heritage Center is built around the houses. So you can take tours of these three houses, and they're set up in three different time periods. But also the thing that was like kind of weird to me was like being in these houses, and then like I'm like, this is not very different. I mean, they're smaller, but like the style was not very different from the houses I grew up in, which are technically historical houses now. So kind of like the overlap of like, okay, this is a site, but the other places are just where people live, and how that kind of all overlaps in reality.
Maybe this book will start, your own walking tour once, things start to open again.
I would love to do a walking tour. But I also did get, after I started writing the book, I was looking up all of these sites, and I kept ending up on this one person's articles on Brownstoner, or brownstoner.com, but and they were writing under a pseudonym, I think, and they had like all of these great architectural articles. And then I found out that it was a Black woman who gave tours of walking tours of Brooklyn. And I reached out to her, and I was like, okay, first of all, I swear to you, I did not know you existed until now. The book is like half done. But also, I asked her for her feedback, some experiences she's had, and kind of like, and I honestly am like, have deadline brain, and I'm blanking on her last name. Her first name is Susan. She's in the acknowledgements, but she very kindly spoke to me, and she, I believe, she's probably writing a book about Brooklyn history, because she should. I was like, okay, are you working on a book? Because you should be. So this can all be in one place, and we can give you money. But but she was very helpful. So she no longer lives in Brooklyn, but she was doing these kinds of tours, and it was really interesting hearing from her perspective. So
that's cool. Have you been on other literary pilgrimages? Like,
I've done some tours in Once Ghosted, Twice Shy. They kind of do a walking tour of New York, And I also wanted to do a walking tour, make that into a walking tour. But, you know, it's places I had visited and seen while walking around, and like things that I wanted to do because I was missing New York. So it's like, you know, I can make this little tour thing of what I imagine to be a great New York day for these characters. And even in A Princess in Theory, I feel like I kind of really love thinking of all of the fun, weird places that you kind of just end up at sometimes when you're walking around. Like sometimes you can take a tour, or sometimes you're walking, you're like, what is that? Like, what is that little thing? And then you go to look at it, and it's like a cool museum, or it's, you know, some random pop-up, or so that's one of the fun things about New York. You can walk through it every day and find all different things to notice, or something new that's just popped up.
I think in Princess in Theory, you were there were a lot of, you did reference a lot of places in New York, and I think one of my comments to you was the A train doesn't stop here.
I know. I was like, oh man, called out.
You know, you mentioned, you know, wanting to do more walking tours. Once this whole, you know, pandemic thing is over and you're back in the States, what, aside from hugging and kissing your family that you haven't seen in such a long time, what would be the first thing you do once you get stateside?
The first thing I will do is what I often do when I get off the plane. I take the train to 30 to Penn Station, and I get a slice of pizza. Everyone who is able to just get a slice of pizza all the time, you have no idea how lucky you are. And then after getting a slice of pizza, I will go get dim sum. After walking around for a while, I will maybe go get more pizza.
All about food.
It is. Yeah, just going, finding all of the restaurants I like, or new ones that serve food that I want to eat. And it'll be a lot of eating,
Lainey mentioned earlier that when no one is watching, his library reads. Top pick for September. Yay. What has been your earliest memories of libraries?
I think if anyone was at the Librarians Day luncheon at RWA last year, I mentioned that I used to be like really anxious in libraries because I was just like, it seemed like a trap. Like there were these books and like I could just take them. It seemed like, yeah, I mean, that was, I guess, just my small anxious self being like, what if I try and take it and someone says I'm in trouble? But so my memory is just kind of like walking around the library, like sweating and being like, am I really allowed to take this? Then checking out books that, you know, I probably shouldn't be checking out, but the librarians were cool. So they
How old were you when you got your first library card?
Maybe like 8, because there was a library when we moved to Jersey City, there was a library across the street, like a small branch in a building across the street from us. It was just like a small one floor. The main library was further down, but I could go by myself to the one across the street. So it was like around 7 or 8. And then there was also like, you know, the school library where I would take a lot of books, and then yeah, after a certain point, I didn't return some books to the library and just like was like, I'm a criminal. I can't go back. But some librarians at the Librarians Day luncheon did pardon me. They said that the fees are waived, so now I can freely enter the libraries without. But.
So you mentioned, you know, you were taking out a lot of books at the libraries. Did you have friends with the librarians? Did you make friends with the librarians? Did they like point you in the right direction?
Not particularly. I was just kind of like the one who would go in and like lurk in the aisle for like a really, really, really long time because, okay, you had to make the perfect decision when you were taking some books out as if you couldn't come back to the library again. I was also like that at the video store. Like, remember the video stores? Just like in there for hours, for like longer than it would take to watch a movie. But, but you know, the choice that you have to make the right choice. So the librarians were friendly, but I was just like trying to go around, look at books that I didn't know if I was allowed to look at, grab them, get out as quickly as possible before anything could happen.
That is hilarious. Oh my God, I'm jumping in here because that is so funny. You have no idea how many authors tell us like these funny stories about, you know, either that or when they transition from the children's section to the adult section in that moment when they get to, you know, move on over. And it's the funniest, sweetest thing ever. I love that. I love that. I'm just interjecting here to let you know, hello, Rooster, that we have a lot of librarians who are watching and so excited about this book. Many have already read it. People are ordering more for their, somebody just said, I asked my library to order some more copies. And Erica, can I jump in for 1 second to get to a couple of questions here? And Lainey, we could tag team here, but I wanted to get these couple of questions in here again.
One comment that said they were at the RWA Librarian Day and you were fantastic. So
thank you.
Oh yeah, it was fun. Okay, so there are librarians from all over. We have Baltimore, we have Maureen Roberts, we have Wendy Bartlett, who says you are so big in Cuyahoga Library. Just Casey Davis from Connecticut, and okay, so hang on, here we go. Nobody wants any spoilers. Okay, Jennifer Elizabeth says, Alyssa, thank you for this event today. Who or what were your inspirations growing up that may have led you to pursue writing? Thank you.
So thank you for the question. And also before I answer, I just want to say thank you to all of the librarians. Like, you all have been so supportive to me over the course of my career. I'm going to stop before I get emotional and answer the question, but thank you. My influences are really varied. Some people, but one thing I have been thinking a lot lately about how things we read when we're very young kind of we imprint on them and kind of replicate them in some way, even if we're not writing the same thing. So Stephen King was huge for me when I was a kid. The first adult novel that I tried to read was Stephen King with The Shining, and I was 7. It was not the best decision. And I got up to the part with room 237. I think that's the room number. And it was the cover with the silver, which is why I had picked it out. It was like the silver shiny cover. And I got so scared. I went to my older sister's side of the room and she had like a big pile of like clothes and stuff. And I shoved the book under I guess assuming my sister, like nothing scary would be smart, so not unwise enough to come out and try to like bother my sister, who was scarier than monsters. But so Stephen King, a lot of it was like, you know, things I was reading from my parents' library, Anne Rice, Kurt Vonnegut, John Irving, but also, you know, books that I was getting from school, like The Babysitter's Club, the Bobbsey Twins, and Sweet Valley High, when the Scholastic, you know, from the the Scholastic book fair when I briefly was out of school. That would have the book fair, and from the bookmobile when I was briefly at that school where the bookmobile would show up. So it was a mix of like children's books, fairy tales. I loved fairy tales. And then random adult like horror, lit fic, and science fiction stolen from my parents' bookshelves.
That's good. That's good. Lainey, do you see, we have other questions? This is Jen Lockhart.
Yeah, Susan Riley wants to know, do you have a more traditional dramatic novel planned for your next work, or is it another thriller or romance?
Right now I'm working on two romance series. One is Contemporary Royalty with Erica, the Runaway Royals series, which is a spinoff of the Reluctant Royals. It's basically the even more reluctant royals. And the first book in that series is out on December 1st, How to Catch a Queen. And then I'm currently working on book 2. I'm also working on my sci-fi romance thriller series, The Hive, which I really need to put into print. I've been like so busy, but I need to do the layout and get that into print so it can be in libraries. But after that, I don't know, I have all kinds of things that I want to do. I definitely have more thrillers, like we were discussing before the event. I have lots of thrillers. I have historical ideas that I want to get back to. So I think right now the next books will be romance, but I also have ideas for other books down the line.
We have Janet Lockhart, who said she's down in North Carolina. She loves walking tours. She take a walking tour with you.
Oh, thank you.
Let's see. Let's see. Casey Davis says, has the book been optioned for film or TV?
It is optioned, so we'll see if anything happens with it. I know who I've been telling everyone. I'm like, I would love to see Nikki Bahari. There are a lot of people who I feel like could play the role, but I'm like, I feel like she would be a great Sydney. But we'll see what happens, but it has been optioned.
Okay. Lainey?
Maureen Roberts wants to know which romance authors influenced you, and then if I can add on to that, if you can talk about your date night videos.
Oh,
romance authors who influenced me. I guess when I first started out, and actually this is kind of how I met Erica, as being a huge nerd I was supposed to be pitching her a book, and instead I was just like rambling about all of the romance authors that I love.
But I think I asked you about it. We met at a conference, by the way. It was the New Jersey conference. I haven't been to a writer's conference in like ages. And for whatever reason, it caught me at a really weak moment. And I said yes. And I went out to New Jersey, and that's how I met Alyssa for the first time.
Yeah, well, 20.
I don't even want to think.
But for historical, I started reading with historicals. I started out reading like Julie Garwood, Judith McNaught. Those have been big influences. I think for How to Catch a Queen, that influence will be pretty clear. It's a Highlander takes a wife story, except it's an African Highland king. But so, Judith McNaught, Julie Garwood, then Beverly Jenkins. also a lot of, smaller press published Black authors like Ceresia Glass, Wendy Coakley Thompson, people who were publishing in that little boom of, I think they were with Genesis Press probably in the early 2000s, Crystal Hubbard. And then, moving forward, like Sarah McLean, Courtney Milan, just so many, Kit Rocha. And then like the weird thing is like people whose books I loved, then I became friends with them. Like that's like the secret benefit of becoming an author. Sometimes you meet the people whose books you love and it's like, oh, I love your books because we get along well, cool. And like Kit Rocha made this necklace, by the way, they sell them. But so yeah, I think a lot of authors have, romance authors, and especially as so many different kinds of romances have been published over the last few years, it's been like a really great environment to, see all of the different kinds of romances there can be. But as for like, I wasn't the kid who, like the books that I was stealing from my parents growing up, there weren't that many romances until I was in maybe like a little before high school, but, and then that was like Jennifer Crusie, taking my mom's Jennifer Crusie's. So it was basically, whatever my mom was getting interested in at the time. And Sandra Kitt, Sandra Kitt was the first romance that I bought for myself. And I think I was like 11. I got it from Walden Books. So yeah, like so many different authors.
About your romance, your date night videos.
Oh yeah. So date night started. It's an event. It's usually every 2 weeks. Right now it will restart in September because of all of the upcoming release stuff. But it's basically hanging out with 3 authors, usually people whose books have had recent releases. And it started, after COVID and the lockdowns. And it was kind of, I was speaking with Hannah, who owns Loyalty, their bookstores. There's one in DC and one in Maryland. And we were talking about doing an event. And then it was like, well, what if we did it every 2 weeks? And what if, so then it kind of took life from there. And basically it's just fun hanging out with romance authors, talking about their books, but also talking about, nerdy things they enjoy or what they've been reading, some things that influenced them growing up, what their fandoms are. It's also, we talk about Crash Landing on You every episode, which is a really good K-drama. And it's just been really fun, and also like a fun way of connecting with people during, and you can go to my site, and I have started putting up the archives. And it's like been a really great way of connecting once all of the live events were canceled. A lot of people, there are people who show up every event and they talk in the comments and kind of just have a date night. So with this like, friend date night, catching up, trying to have little oases of goodness in a world that has been kind of scary for the last few months.
Yeah, no kidding. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Abby Burke. First of all, lots of throwbacks. There's people tripping down memory lane about Walden Books. But Abby Burke wants to know what sort of time period for the historical.
Ew. I feel like that would give away some secrets.
Then never mind, Abby.
I appreciate the question. and I will, but I can't answer it yet. But it's not American set, is all I'll say.
That's, oh, wait a minute. Let's see. La-la-la.
I think you're muted.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? All right. Lainey, have we answered everybody's questions? Does it look like?
I think we got the big questions. Lots of love.
So much love.
Thank
and
you.
there was a comment about How to Catch a Queen. I lost it, but they loved it. They got to read an arc. So.
Oh, yay. That's like the double stressful, like when the releases overlap and it's like, oh no, a new wave of possibility of people hating the book. So thank you to whoever liked it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, people are just very excited about.
One question. Let's see.
Yep.
It says, have you had any writer's block because of the pandemic, or have you just been able to get more writing done?
I mean, I've had some days where it was just kind of like, all right, there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
So I have had some writer's block. Erica knows. But in some ways, it's not been super different. But I'm not one of those people who suddenly got like 10 books finished. But I have surprisingly not had as much writer's block as I thought I would have, but enough that Erica is like, you better get me that book. It's coming.
No comment.
But so yes, there has been some writer's block, but luckily not as bad because I'm not in the US and kind of have some different circumstances. It's not as bad as it could have been.
You know, it's not funny, but I mean, there are a lot of people, writers, us, certainly librarians, people are saying that they're having a reader's block in a way, that it's been really hard to focus. I don't know. I think people are starting to get a little bit used to this new world for now, in some way, but definitely we've had more than enough conversations with people who just say it's very hard to concentrate. It's really hard to say.
It's been a big comfort read time with people rereading books that they kind of already know what's going to happen. Because there's like, you don't have to worry about any surprises.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. And in a way, it's kind of nice to go back and visit an old friend.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I did want to mention before we wrap things up, is that your book, again, so wonderful, so much love for this book, and a #1 library reads pick. We're thrilled. It's also Harper's inaugural diverse voices pick. And so this is an internal thing, much like Lead Read is, but this is a diversity and inclusion committee within Harper, and they have read, this committee has read so many submissions and have selected your book as the very first diverse voices pick. So I wanted to mention that. And I don't know, Erica, if you wanted to say anything about that. Again, it is an internal thing, but I think it also speaks volumes to just how far reaching this book is. And I just want to congratulate you and thank you again for writing it. And just, Erica, and again, Erica, thank you for taking the time. Of course, Alyssa, I mean, this is such a unique, relationship that we still, I love to listen to editors and authors talk about how they met, how they work. I love this, Erica's waiting for my book and Erica's saying no comment. Like, okay, let's see what happens when we log off. But But anyway, I just want to thank you
No,
both, Lainey
she
and
has
I.
been very patient with me. I should be clear about that.
Well, all good things to those who wait, and good things from you, Alyssa, for this book and so many of your other books, and more to come. And the rooster agrees.
Sure. Yeah, it's like the perfect note to end on.
I know.
Oh, well, before we go, we want to remind everybody about some upcoming events, including this Friday. You're taking over our Instagram account, and I have a cool e-card to share. So tune in, Harper Library on Instagram. Alyssa's taking over. Post. I've already heard some plans, so get ready. Some fun posts coming your way, and we'll show your writing space, and maybe there'll be a rooster picture in there because he wants to be a part of it.
There's a strong possibility that the rooster will finally get its time to shine.
And then also next week we have author Emily Danforth coming for Door to Door, and she's taking over Instagram as well. So that's next week. Be sure to tune in then. So that's our calendar corner.
Well, thank you all for joining. Erica, Alyssa, Rooster.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. And again, thank you all for joining. Have a lovely day. Be well. Take care.
Thank you, Lainey. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Alyssa. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Bye-bye.